stages. So remember, there's lots of talks all day long until 6 p.m. And in addition to our wonderful speakers, we do have lots of fun activities here, including an art gallery. There's the Zen Zone. I have a grounding station. If you need to discharge some extra energy, please feel free to go up to the Zen Zone. There's the DJ Chill Room, which has had amazing music this entire time, so please support our DJs there. There's the podcast studio if you want to book some time, and there's the tabletop gaming arena, so get your table tennis on if that's interesting to you. So again, lots to do here in Denver. It's a gorgeous day. The Sport Castle and the Biddle Hub, today's the last day for hackathon, so we will be announcing winners tomorrow. So if you have teams in that, good luck to all of you. And without further ado, let's present Mr. Kevin Owocki.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. My name is Kevin Owocki. I'm mostly known as the founder of Gitcoin, and we're going to be talking about public goods funding and why it is the next meta. It is the competitive advantage for your ecosystem. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Gitcoin 2.0, which we just launched yesterday, the white paper of, and how it supports that vision. So has anyone in the audience used Gitcoin? All right, the faithful here at 10 a.m. How about you guys walking by? Have you ever heard of Gitcoin? All right, friendly wave, that's cool. If you want to come learn about public goods funding, you can come join us. All right, so public goods funding is the next meta. Meta stands for most effective tactic available. Basically, the idea here is that in crypto, there's an evolving meta of things that you can do to be more effective in whatever it is that you are doing. And the meta is always evolving. Part of the game in crypto is going from the meta being ICOs to the meta being vegetable coins to the meta being loot. I don't know if you guys remember loot, but this cycle, I think it's going to be about DAOs allocating capital to their ecosystems, public goods, and that is going to be a way that DAOs compete for talent and compete for creating the best tooling in their ecosystems. So public goods funding is the next meta, and I want to talk a little bit in depth about what that means at an object level. So Justin Drake on Bankless in January 2024, so this is new information as of last month, noted that L2s compete on tooling, liquidity, virtual machines, tokenomics, public goods, security, and biz dev. And I think that this is a really important thing to lay out because there is a multi-billion-dollar war going on, competition going on to figure out who's going to get to consume the most block space, get the most developers building on top of their layer 2s. But I take a little bit of a frame, an issue with the frame that Justin put out because I actually think that public goods is how you get all of the other things on that list. So basically, if you want to win the L2 wars, if you're Polygon, or if you're Arbitrum or you're Optimism or you're anyone else who has to deploy capital in order to compete in the market, you have to figure out how to get to having tooling, liquidity, virtual machines, tokenomics, security, biz dev for your ecosystem. And the naive way to do that is just to hire people. But the scalable way to do that is to use the novel forms of capital allocation available in the ecosystem to create growth for those things for your ecosystem. So you've got a treasury with billions of dollars of capital in it, and there's a political economy built on how you deploy that. And if we can come up with the right capital allocation machine in order to issue grants that create growth, then we can get all of these things with precision and scale that has never been possible before. What does the capital allocation machine look like? I think that it basically at a high level just takes in money and it takes in data, and there's some sort of function, there's some sort of mechanism, and it outputs money to the people who are building your tooling, your liquidity, your virtual machines, and it hopefully reinforces the best projects that are coming to your ecosystem without the overhead of politics and gamesmanship that has typically been associated with grant-giving ecosystems. So I think that basically the opportunity space in bringing these funding mechanisms on chain is that we no longer have to deal with the gatekeeping and the power brokers associated with traditional grant giving mechanisms. One way to make a lot of friends is to have millions of dollars of grants that you want to give out. I don't know how many of those people that come around will be your true friends, but we can bring capital allocation on chain, which means less gatekeeping. We can build more scalable and precise capital allocation mechanisms than have ever been possible. So I'm really excited about solving the problems of capital allocation in this space. I think that Web 1 and Web 2 gave us massively multiplayer online role-playing games. I think that Web 3 is going to give us massively multiplayer funding games. The future of crowdfunding is going to be on-chain, and we're going to do some weird, powerful, democratic, and transparent and accessible ways of allocating capital. So Gitcoin just happens to be in a position to make this happen. We've delivered $56 million worth of funding to the Ethereum ecosystem so far. Can I get another round of hands for people who've received money from Gitcoin? All right. Hey, you over there. Hey, you. Have you ever got money from Gitcoin grants? No. All right. Not yet. You will eventually. We'll allocate capital to the people who are funding the Ethereum ecosystem, or working in the Ethereum ecosystem. We've done $4.2 million worth of unique donations so far for 4,000 projects, and we've learned a lot about how to do capital allocation at scale to the Ethereum ecosystem and to how to do it on-chain. Gitcoin is mostly known for quadratic funding, and quadratic funding is really great for democratic capital allocation to your community. But we're expanding out into providing a menu of complementary capital allocation mechanisms for your ecosystem. Direct grants happen to be really great for simplicity. Set out a pot of money, say apply for it, and we will give it to you if you are doing good things for the ecosystem. And then retroactive public goods funding. Anyone an OP Retro PGF recipient? Humpty is? Okay. All right, I won't pick on anyone in the periphery now that we have an actual audience here. But Optimism is crushing it. I'm so proud of Optimism. The whole meme of Ether's Phoenix of retroactive public goods funding is really cool. We have partnered with them to build a tool called EasyRetroPGF.xyz that allows anyone to allocate capital the way that Optimism does to summon Ether's Phoenix in their own DAO. And so Gitcoin is focused on building software that allows you to bring this theory into practice. We've got a tool called Gitcoin Grant Stack, which allows anyone to run a quadratic funding campaign, a direct grants campaign, or a retroactive public goods funding campaign. And we've also got Easy Retro PGF, which is going to allow people to run retroactive public goods funding rounds. So we are taking this this theory of capital allocation and actually putting it in practice, and I'm really excited to explore the design space. Speaking of the design space, one of the cornerstones of our exploration of the design space is this thing called Allo protocol. Can anyone guess what Allo is short for? All right, someone's had their coffee this early in the morning. All right, so basically there are a couple of components of Allo protocol, which is a capital allocation protocol for those of you who are just catching up. You ingest in data and money, and out comes money to the recipients of your ecosystem that are supporting your tooling and your liquidity and your EVM compatibility and all the other things that you need to compete in the marketplace, okay? So you put money in from your treasury, and we build a registry of projects along with your community. You put it into Allo, and then there's this component that is called a strategy. And this strategy, what it does is it decides how to allocate capital to your community. The beautiful thing about Allo protocol is that it supports multiple strategies for capital allocation, okay? And the way that we're gonna explore the design space is that we're gonna basically do like a parameter sweep of all the different configurations of these types of modules. Okay, so Gitcoin Grants has a registry called the Allo registry, but we also are building interfaces with the Giveth registry and the ClearFund registry and the Optimism registry to abstract those registries in a way that makes them comprehensible to Allo protocol, which will allow all the strategies in Gitcoin Grants to talk to all the registries out there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to keep innovating on making better quadratic funding, retroactive public goods funding. We've got some weird capital allocation mechanisms that we're also going to build in here. And you're going to be able to sub out all the different strategies for capital allocation in your ecosystem. And then what we're going to do is we're going to build new ways to fund these projects with not only your treasury and governance proposals, but we're imagining that there will be superfluid streams and radical drips type streams that go into this trustless capital allocation machine. So you could imagine constructing a DAO in such a way that you don't have to make all of the funds go to a treasury and have a bunch of governance in order to distribute it. You can just trustlessly push it into Allo protocol, and Allo will automatically summon people to run quadratic funding rounds and retroactive public goods funding rounds for ecosystems. So a governance minimized way to allocate capital effectively for your ecosystem. Okay, so this is the entire design space of capital allocation, okay? As capital allocation moves on chain, there's gonna be lots of massively multiplayer funding games that we are going to invent. And we are doing a parameter sweep of all the possible ways that you could get money into that system, what tokens you could put into that system, how you could represent a registry, and what kind of capital allocation strategies are possible within this design space, okay? So we're building all these different types of capital allocation machines, and now that Gitcoin is decentralized and modular, it's really easy to sub these parts out for each other. Oh man, Gitcoin 1.0 was a centralized monolith, and we were just stuck with one mechanism and one registry, and we couldn't explore the design space. But now that we're modular, we're following the Unix philosophy, we can have each of these components do one thing and do them well, and we can just sub them out as we explore the design space for each other. And so I'm really excited about exploring the search space of possible capital allocation mechanisms and finding the ones that create the most value for ecosystems. And we're gonna reason a priori, which means through theory, by talking to the big brains like Vitalik and Glenn Weil. And we're gonna also reason empirically, which means in practice, about how these things actually work. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna iterate towards the local maxima of the best possible quadratic funding tools, best possible retroactive public goods funding tools, the best possible conviction voting tools, the best possible, I don't know, stuff we haven't even invented yet. Try to explain to someone in the 1990s what Twitter was. Like, that's what trying to explain to someone like what capital allocation will look like in 2035 in the year 2024. We don't know what's over the horizon, but we're building a machine to traverse the design space, okay? And the one thing that I want to be really clear here is that it's a plural design space. There's a reason that I wear rainbows everywhere that I go, and it's not just because we love the rainbows and unicorns. It's because we believe in the plurality of different capital allocation mechanisms, okay? So you can imagine the design space actually more as having multiple local maximas, which we're going to discover. And I think that it's important not to try to build one big monolithic capital allocation mechanism for everyone. What we want to do is build small components that reach their local maxima and do one thing and do it well. So direct grants is going to be really good at simple grant giving and doing RFPs. And quadratic funding, we're really looking at finding the local maxima of how do we do democratic capital allocation that your community funds along with you. Retroactive public goods funding is going to be really good at retroactively rewarding contributors, okay? So this isn't a design space where there's going to be one winner. We're going to have a multi-tool of capital allocation mechanisms that each achieve their own local maxima of what's possible. And then we're going to make that available to everyone in the DAO space who wants to allocate capital to themselves or to their ecosystem at scale. And again, funding your public goods is a competitive advantage, and this is the most effective way to do it because we're exhaustively searching the design space and making those tools easily available to you so that you can compete in whatever the fuck it is you do, and we'll handle the capital allocation with these strategies. I think this is $1 trillion market, okay? As more and more assets go on chain, as EVM eats the world, as everything gets tokenized, more and more ecosystems are going to have to fund their public goods because funding your public goods are a competitive advantage. And so this isn't this like cute hippy-dippy side project like public goods funding, we do it just out of like the altruism of our heart. This is a competitive advantage, and as more assets go on chain, I think this is a huge market. Right now, Gitcoin does direct grants, quadratic funding, retroactive public goods funding. There's a couple mechanisms that we haven't even really talked about yet, conviction voting and streaming quadratic funding. I can get into what those are if you're a mechanism design nerd like I am later. But I'm really excited about building in delegated domain allocation, private voting systems, angel investing 2.0. I imagine a future in which we're all funding the next upcoming projects in the ecosystem, not just fucking Andreessen Horowitz. Although, I like Chris Dixon, I like his new book, Read, Write, Own is cool. Gift circles, self-curated registries, direct-to-contract incentives, impact attestations. You probably don't know what these are, and you don't really need to know until you can use them on Allo protocol. But in 10 years, you're going to be receiving rewards for having impact in ecosystems from these mechanisms. So, if you want to front-run that, you can maybe learn about what they are. Gitcoin's final form, I think, becomes an attractor. A tractor is basically a dynamic social system that changes the behavior of the agents in the system, okay? So Gitcoin is an attractor that builds better capital allocation, and basically it's got a social layer. So if you've read the Green Pill book, or if you've shown up to my talk, then you're a part of the social layer. We are memeing about public goods and creating a regen culture around public goods funding in the ecosystem. There's the technology layer, which I just told you about. We're building capital allocation machines, and hopefully one day they will be really well documented, audited, plural ecosystem of tools. And then the economic layer, in which eventually we'll have a revenue engine for Gitcoin, and we'll probably be doing token swaps with other DAOs in order to build a 3-3 between ourselves and our partner DAOs, okay? So we're building an attractor for capital allocation, and it's got 3 layers, and every new partner that integrates with Gitcoin and uses that capital allocation mechanism to fund their own ecosystem strengthens Gitcoin's attractor. Every new integration, every new capital allocation mechanism that we build into Gitcoin 2.0 also strengthens the attractor. Every time you build a meme about regen and public goods, you're strengthening the attractor. And because these things are reflexive, momentum begets momentum, the attractor gets stronger over time as more people allocate capital in their ecosystems. We get more data about what allocates capital in these ecosystems well, and then we're able to iterate the design space and build more effective capital allocation machines. So basically, I think this is kind of like what the final form of Gitcoin looks like, is that it's an attractor for people who want to build their own ecosystems and do it more effectively than they could with a grants program. And bear in mind, there's hundreds of DAOs that have tens of millions of dollars of capital. There's tens of DAOs that have billions of dollars of capital. Okay, so if we can build the better capital allocation machines, then this is only going to get stronger over time. Eventually, we hit escape velocity, and we're funding the world's public goods and not just Ethereum's public goods. Okay, so in summary, if you want to win the L2 wars or the LRT wars or the DeFi wars or whatever ecosystem you're in, you need grants to power your growth. Gitcoin has the best capital allocation machines and also a plurality of capital allocation machines to fund what matters in your ecosystem. We're going to build a world in which we not only have client diversity at the Ethereum base layer, but we've got a diversity of public goods funding mechanisms, and there will be quadratic funding complementing retroactive public goods funding, complementing direct grants, complementing things that we've never thought about, and it's all going to be available through Gitcoin grants. Funding your ecosystem's public goods is a sustainable competitive advantage, and that's why I'm so passionate about building these tools to make all of you more effective in building crypto values and making them actually usable in the world. Right now, we have direct grants, we have quadratic funding, we have retroactive public goods funding. If you're interested in building those into your ecosystem, come find myself or anyone that's in a Gitcoin hoodie around here. We will get you set up on Gitcoin grants, and we'll run a pilot round with you. And public goods are good. Thanks for coming to my talk. I have 40 seconds, so if you have a short question, you can ask it. Go ahead. Yeah, and so this is all built on the EVM. Any ERC20 token can be used. Yeah. When Moon? Dude, the market's going straight fucking up. Have you looked at your phone? Yeah, me too. I never check prices either. But number go up. All right, this has been fun. Thanks, everyone.